I asked myself what I could possibly do for a beginning of this review, but then I thought, maybe I should just ask Ant-Man.
You could always review it like a normal person.
You are a jerk. Hello and welcome back to another Midnight Showing. As always, I'm Kelly, and I just got out of Ant-Man. You might have noticed the change in background. Too much noise started happening while I was recording over there, so I had to restart over here. So, getting that little thing out of the way. This movie. Okay. So, a little background story on me before I go into this, because I need you to understand something. I hate Ant-Man. More specifically, I hate Hank Pym Ant-Man. I don't mind Scott Lang, and I can't think of the second guy who did it, because I know he was the third one in the comics, but whatever. I don't mind him, but I hate Hank Pym. He is just grates on me. The self-righteous douchebag who always getting on Tony Stark about how he's so evil, he's this warmongering idiot, even though he hasn't been like that for like 40 years, and just going off on him every single version. You want to know a specific version that he does this in? Watch the Avengers animated series. It's on Disney Channel right now. They've got the first 2 seasons of it on Netflix. Seriously, that's 90% of Hank Pym's dialogue, and it is so freaking annoying. Jesus Christ, I hate him. And what can he do? I know versions like the aforementioned Avengers series have him being able to shrink and grow into a 3-story tall titan. But before that, all he could do was shrink his the size of an ant. Usually commanding ants to do things for him that he can do as a regular sized person, like hold and shoot a gun with a special antidote for a mutated monster. Yeah, that actually happened. I think that was the issue that they introduced the Wasp in. Seriously. Ant-Man is a joke in the comic book world. Just like Aquaman, yes, they have their badass moments and they have their new characterizations that work. But ultimately, yeah, Ant-Man is a joke. And now that you know my thoughts and feelings on Ant-Man, when I went into this movie, I was expecting... What I got instead was a very, very clever, well-written story about Scott Lang trying to put his life back together and being called on to do great and extraordinary things because it's Scott Lang. So yes, this movie stars Paul Rudd as Scott Lang and Michael Douglas as Hank Pym, who was actually a very perfect choice for Hank Pym, and I actually didn't mind him very much inside of this movie. I had some problems with him, but I'll get into those a little bit later. And is not directed by Edgar Wright, unfortunately. I really, really wish that he had stayed on to the project, although they gave him credit for everything else. Story, screenplay, producing, executive producer. His name is on every single credit except for director. And I honestly think that's because they used a lot of his test footage and shots, and you can tell which ones they used because those were a little bit better. But for what it is, this story was a very amazing, uplifting, good superhero story mixed with a heist. So it's basically like Iron Man meets the Ocean's 11. It's just good fun the whole way through. The comedy is very legitimate and not forced, which I was really worried about because some of these other superhero things have been getting a little, I say funny lines because I'm Tony Stark, or I don't understand because I'm Thor. No, this one felt really, really natural and laid back, and there wasn't anything that felt cartoonish, which is a little bit weird to say about a superhero movie. Don't get me wrong, it does have problems, but overall, this is a see it immediately. Go see it in theaters. Go see it in 3D, because the 3D, every time Ant-Man shrinks and grows, just looks so amazing. I mean, it's not the best 3D in the world. I mean, it doesn't have the same majesty as, say, something like Interstellar did, but it had almost the same level of creativity, especially near the end of the movie, which I'll get into in the spoiler section. So, yeah, final verdict, go see it immediately and pay the extra for that 3D. You will not regret it. It is a fun ride that the entire family can enjoy. For those that don't mind spoilers, let's go into a few of them. As I said, a lot of the good points inside of this are the actors chosen to play each part. Paul Rudd especially nails it as Scott Lang. And as he's trying to rebuild his life after getting out of prison for basically doing what Edward Snowden did, with the exception of Snowden basically compromising a bunch of people who were undercover at the time, and Scott Lang just posting a bunch of bank reports. So, whatever. Politics aside. He gets out of jail. He wants to get his life back together. He wants to be able to see his daughter, and he thinks that he can do it. He's got a master's in electrical engineering. He's sure that he can find a job if he looks hard enough. About a year later, he's still jobless and getting fired from Baskin Robbins. Yeah. That's harsh. But, yeah, he's trying. He is trying. He's resisting the temptation to go back to work as a burglar, even though he's living with 3 of his accomplices from the last job. One of them played by Michael Pena, and by God, he is hilarious. He's 90% of the comedy inside of this. And if Javier, you're watching this, he literally is acting like you the entire time, just with a faster talking speed. It's freaking hilarious. But, yeah, he's trying to get his life back together. Hank Pym, Michael Douglas, approaches him and says, I got a job for you. Become the new Ant-Man and help me save the world. And we can start giving you a second chance. Okay. And so, story ensues. I also said that Michael Douglas was a perfect choice for Hank Pym, and he really was. You can tell this guy has been through the ringer, and he does still show shades of what annoys me about Hank Pym the most. You know, that self-centered, arrogant attitude about his passive-aggressive, oh, peace is the way, but I'm going to punch this guy in the face, completely hypocritical messaging. But at the same time, he lost his wife, who was Wasp, and they do actually show a flashback of that, which is very, 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 very intense. Although the science on it, even I'm calling bullshit on it. I'll get into that in the bad sections of this movie. But, he's definitely mellowed out. He's not that I yell at you first kind of guy that I see in, the aforementioned Avengers series that just bugs the shit out of me. My favorite episodes being the ones where he's stuck in Wakanda studying vibranium. But, yeah, he was just perfect. And as a mentor, he makes a lot more sense than as an actual hero. Which 10 points for that. 10 points for that, Michael Douglas. You nailed it, even if I don't really like the character you're supposed to be playing. His daughter, played by Evelyn I can't pronounce her name. I'm not even going to try to pronounce her name, because the only thing that comes to mind is Evangelion. But, yeah, she plays Hope, and she's basically the love interest. I don't know if it was the best thing to get them together in by the end of this movie. I would have liked another movie so to actually kind of build the relationship a little bit, because they've known each other for all of about 3 days, but they're already making out with each other. Okay. Actress-wise, she was playing Hope perfectly. She hates her. She has this deep-seated, butting head hatred for her father, as well as she's only bringing him in because she knows that she needs him. And it's actually pretty clear. I don't want to say clear. It's more of a good emotional balance between why they need Scott Lang, and he doesn't want his daughter wearing the Ant-Man or Wasp suits, and the actual concept. If that makes any sense, it kind of rides that line of being too emotional and bagging and drawing the movie down and not enough. It rides that line pretty good. There's points where it's just like, okay, we get it, move on. Another point you're like, huh, that's a good way of putting it. Which gets me back to Paul Rudd as Scott Lang. And one of the reasons that he was so good at this is because he's the one that usually balances that out. When he needs to speak a lot more emotional or technical and actually hit hard, and he does, but he does it a little bit differently. He points out the facts of the situation. There's one point where he and Hope are talking about this, and she just walked out on her dad as to why he won't let her just use the suit because she doesn't need training. She's already known all this stuff. She knows how to control the ants. She knows how to control the suit. She can do everything right now. Why not give it to her? And she's just pissed off, and Scott comes out to try to comfort her, and she just lets out on him, and then Scott's just like, I'm expendable. The whole reason he doesn't want you going in, you're not expendable. He already lost your mother. He doesn't want to lose you. I'm just some nobody he found on the street he's trying to give a second chance to. And it's moments like that to just really, really emphasize why Paul Rudd was perfect for Scott Lang. His delivery on that, yeah, he is blunt and he's blunt but sensitive and emotional at the same time. He can be sarcastic and funny, but never to the point of, say, Tony Stark, where he becomes a cartoon of himself like he did inside of Avengers 2. It was the good balance between reimagining of the character and staying true to the comics, and I loved every second of it. Another really good thing about this was the actual plot itself, which is essentially just Iron Man 2. Seriously, that's the whole movie. Guy makes a suit, he doesn't want to give it away, another guy ends up trying to recreate the same suit and slash formula, and succeeding. Now he wants to market it as a weapon, and world domination, take over the world. Here's some Hydra agents in there for you, just so we can emphasize that this is part of the Marvel Universe. Yay! That's basically the plot, and it works very, very well for both Iron Man and Scott Lang. It does. I don't really know how else to say that other than you have to see it in action, because yes, it is basically Iron Man, but they also threw in all this heist stuff about them trying to steal the Yellow Jacket suit, destroy all the data on the servers, and destroy all the Pym particle formula, which is just basically the chemical that allows them to shrink and expand, so that nobody can recreate this for a very long time, because being able to shrink to the size of an ant can do some very, very crazy things. I mean, perfect spies who can literally hide on the wall, fly on the wall, or sneak into someone's briefcase so that when they're alone they open it up, they can assassinate them. And they're all basically Iron Man suits. They got lasers and things attached to them, which make them better soldiers than most everyone else. Yeah, this could really change things. Not to mention the non-warmongering profiteers that this could create, like shrinking down surgeons so they can get every single little piece of cancer out of someone's cell, or shrinking down tumors so that they can be safely removed, that sort of thing. They don't actually go over the medical purposes in this versus the comics that do, which is one of the reasons why I hate Hank Pym, because he won't even give his technology out to do that. But it's really nice to see that they actually do emphasize the plus sides of this. Someone who, yes, understands that technology is silly, but is extremely effective, in the same way as something like Power Rangers is. Yeah, they have spandex and they call in big giant robots to fight monsters, but that's still a big ass giant robot with a bunch of missiles and lasers on it, guys. It really is. And the creators really do. It feels like they really respect the source material this is based on, and they wanted to make it as practical as possible. Which, maybe giving credit to Edgar Wright for a lot of the groundwork, because it feels like that he did a lot of that before he left the project. But kudos to the rest of the team, especially the director, for actually being able to take that groundwork and build something off of it. Most people wouldn't be able to do that, at least with a straight face. And one of the last really good thing I'm going to talk about before going into some of the bad stuff, which is probably the best, the action scenes, as well as the CGI effect for the shrinking and expanding in Ant-Man. It's just perfect. The fights are never just, two guys punching it out. No, it's two guys punching it out, shrinking and expanding, and to dodge each other's blows and to get advantages over each other while lasers are flying around, and then they end up on a toy track with a Thomas the Tank Engine train, which is fucking hilarious because one of the things that in the original comics, Hank Pym, when he shrank down, didn't retain the same level of strength as he did when he was regular size. Although they have changed that over the years, and that's the version that they're going with in this one. So that even when he's small, he can still punch with the same force as a regular person. So, while they're shrinking, they're like on top of the train set while it's flying over. Scott's just like literally picking up the train cars he's just given and throwing them at Yellow Jacket as he runs towards him. You're just like, yes! It's perfect. And we all saw that moment when Yellow Jacket finally gets knocked off the train and he gets hit by the train. Which barely even stuns him. He gets up and he instantly throws that train back at Scott. And just these ideas are very creative. They're inventive. You'll never see a fight like this ever again. I mean, I can't even imagine how much Disney and Marvel had to shell out for a lot of these little toy things, and they use actual toys. The train set, Thomas the Tank Engine, all the other little toys inside the room, they're actual toys. I think they're owned by Hasbro or something like that. And they're actually utilizing them rather than some cheap knockoff toy that they could have made on their computer for about 5 cents. No, they're actually using real toys and real model designs for this, which gives the whole scenario just this sense of real. I know a lot of people complain about Man of Steel, and I might have said this before, but one of the things that I give it credit for, when it used its product placement, such as the IHOP and the Sears and whatnot, when it's like crashing into them, they actually built the sets to look like Sears and IHOP, which makes the town feel so much more real, and they're not just fighting in some random CGI building. Much in the same way that Man of Steel did that, Ant-Man does that, but on a smaller scale. But with bigger effects. And it's just one of those ones just like, yes. Oh, but yeah. Just any of those one reasons that I just mentioned off is worth seeing this movie immediately. It's a great movie. I'm going to buy it on Blu-ray the second it comes out. And that's not just because it's a superhero product, but that could also be my own prejudices. Those who recognize my shirt, straight from E3. But, yeah, there were some negatives about it. And the biggest glaring negative for me was Corey Stoll as Darren Cross, aka Yellow Jacket. Now this is completely subjective. I don't hate this performance. I don't even think it was that bad. But in a story that is overall taking itself fairly seriously and trying to make it somewhat real, especially with the aforementioned toy products and the real, balanced emotion with silliness type thing, Darren Cross as a character is nothing but your cartoon businessman trying to make a profit over the war of everything. And it doesn't jive with the rest of the movie. It doesn't. It's as I said, it's not bad, and there were moments of it that actually do work. But the guy is clearly off his rocker. He's killing people left and right to get this deal to pass through, which he ends up just going through Hydra anyway, so why was he killing off actual legitimate businessmen and not letting them just go on their merry way? It's just, why? Why? And I get that he had a relationship with Hank Pym, being that he was a protege who took over Pym Industries and is turning him into Cross Industries while shoving it in Hank Pym's face. Which, that part especially did not feel right. Yeah, I get that you'd want to do that, but he keeps calling Hank Pym just to shove all these things inside of his face, and just none of it meshes with the rest of the movie. I don't give crap to Corey Stoll because his performance is probably the only reason why it worked to any degree inside of my movie, inside of my opinion. But it just, we shouldn't have a cartoon bad guy for this. We should have a real bad guy businessman. We should have a real one who's being conniving, playing off of people, making everything work around him. The best scene in this movie is when the heist apparently has failed. Scott Lang is captured and put on display for everybody, including Hank Pym, Hope, and all the Hydra agents surrounding them. And Darren is over here explaining he knew about this on the plan the entire time, that they were going to try to steal this Yellow Jacket suit. He didn't figure that they were going to blow up his entire building and destroy everything else with it, but he figured they were trying to steal the suit, and he was ready for them. He even figured out most of their plans and how they were going to do it, and set up a trap so that when they tried to do it, Scott would get captured. That works, because the guy is smart, he's intelligent, he's conniving. But then he goes back to his daddy issues and about how he's going to make $15 billion and he's going to be so overboard rich, blah, 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 that it doesn't work. It doesn't. They should have kept him a little more serious and a little less cartoony, and it would have been a lot better for it. And he's probably the most glaring thing about this entire movie. It just doesn't work with the rest of the premise. Granted, it's not the only thing wrong with it. There's some pretty heavy-duty pacing issues inside this. This movie is extremely quick for a 2-hour film. And I do mean that. Extremely quick. The training that Scott Lang goes through to become Ant-Man about controlling the ants and getting to do what he wants them to do and all that, it's extremely rushed. I mean, it's less than 20 minutes of this 2-hour movie. And he supposedly masters all this in 2 or 3 days? I'm calling bullshit on that. It takes a lot longer to figure out shrink and return to normal, as well as controlling a bunch of ants with your mind while people are shooting at you and and you're having to beat the crap out of them. Come on, guys. Add another 20 minutes to the movie. Add another 30 minutes to the movie. It's fine. It was a good enough movie. The pacing and adding a little bit more time and letting some of these things expand probably would have even helped that the way that I complained about Scott and Hope's relationship just kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, they've only known each other for a few days. Come on, they shouldn't be snogging inside of Hope's dad's house. But it's just one of those ones, just we needed a little bit more time. If they'd thrown in maybe a day or two extra story-wise into there and whatnot, it would have been really, really good. It would have improved the movie a lot. Not to say this movie is bad. I still highly recommend it, and I'm still going to get it, but those pacing issues are just, you need more time. You want us to get invested with these characters? You really do. You need to give us more time with them. You can't just throw them out there for the sake of throwing them out there, which is basically why this movie was made anyway, because Marvel wants to make a bunch of money with their Ant-Man, and they probably will. Don't worry. It's not. I know I'm trying to be cynical. I'm trying to be funny, but it's just at the same time. No, we needed more time. This movie needed to be a little bit longer and to expand on a few more things. Then we get into the other problem, which is the pseudoscience inside of this. This just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So, one of the big plot points inside of this is that Hank Pym lost his wife, the Wasp, when they were trying to stop a missile from hitting the White House. It might have been a nuke. I don't care. But it's they couldn't get into the actual paneling, even though they managed to get onto the missile, because it was made completely out of titanium, and nothing can cut through titanium, except a lot of things. But we'll forgive the movie for that. So the next logical course is to be able to shrink small enough so that they can get in between the cracks. Well, the cracks are sealed tight, so they can't shrink that small. But if you could shrink small enough to start passing in between the molecules, then you can actually fix everything. And Hank Pym's wife, the Wasp, and I don't think they actually give the Wasp a name in this one. But yeah, without hesitation, she breaks her regulator valve on her shrink serum and starts overdosing on it and shrinking infinitely so that she can get inside there and destroy everything. But because she's shrinking infinitely and there's no regulator, she's basically shrinking into non-existence. So she shrinks between the molecules, but then somehow is able to destroy the circuitry and wiring on the inside of the missile before disappearing. If she's already small enough to shrink between the molecules, how is she big enough to actually hit wires and circuit boards? Yeah. And this isn't the only time they do this. In fact, that's just foreshadowing for what Scott Lang has to do to save his daughter and her stepfather. So that he can beat Yellow Jacket. Is because he can't get past the suit. He can't disable the guy. He can't beat him physically. So what's he got to do? Well, he breaks his regular valve, shrinks down, and in a really, really cool sequence of shots where he's like shrinking into the guy's suit and whatnot. And he's like going through the circuit boards. He's like grabbing all these wires and smashing stuff as he like shrinks down further and further and further. Yeah, you're already too small to do any of that to get past his armor. That doesn't make any sense. And don't get me wrong, the shot is really, really cool. And as I said, it reminds me of like Interstellar when the time thing is unraveling on top of itself. And just having him shrink. He manages to fix his regulator using an enlargement weapon that Hank Pym gave him as a fuel source. Which, shouldn't that make him into a giant? But maybe they just don't want to give him that power yet. But yeah, he's already too small to do anything to this guy's suit. He may have gotten past the shield, but he didn't do anything else. He does manage to kill Yellow Jacket by basically disrupting the containment field on his suit so that when he shrinks, things don't shrink together. Basically smashing him into non-existence. I don't even think there was a little pile of goop left there like there was with some of the other test subjects that they show throughout the rest of the movie. But yeah, the science there, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And there's even moments in the heist that do that. Like, there's a moment when he goes into the server room, and he's got these ants that can conduct electricity. There are ants that can safely conduct electricity. They're not genetic hybrids or anything. No, these actually exist. You know, I'm pretty sure I have Google on my phone. I don't need to look that up to know that's fake. You know, living things and electricity. Don't get me bioelectrical impulses such as, you know, the lanternfishes and whatnot that have the glowing things, but ants? No. Just no. And I can suspend my I can extend my suspension of disbelief to encompass a lot of things. But when there's obvious logic problems with, say, the climax of your movie, it bugs me. It really does. He's too small to do anything like that. There's no way there's an ant that can conduct electricity. There's no way that some of this shit can actually happen. And although it was trying to play it off as real, it comes off as almost silly. Don't get me wrong. None of these things break the movie in any way. These are just things that bugged me about it that I wish that they'd gone a little more detail into. Which makes me overall wonder what would this movie have been like if Edgar Wright had stayed on this project. I mean, the guy gave us Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End. This guy knows how to do things very creatively, especially editing-wise. These problems just emphasize why I wish that he hadn't left the project. And the rumor is that he left the project because Marvel wanted Ant-Man to be part of the cinematic universe. To which I have to say, why the hell did you even sign on to the project if you didn't want to do that? Come on, man. It's a Marvel movie. Of course it's going to be in the cinematic universe. Unless it's owned by Fox. Hell, even Sony's playing ball now. And they do throw some very cheeky references out to both Spider-Man and the Avengers inside of this. In which case, here's a point to let me emphasize why I don't like Hank Pym. They actually literally turn to the audience to say, why don't we call the Avengers? And Hank Pym's response? Ugh. I spent 40 years keeping this technology from Howard Stark. I spent 40 years keeping this technology from Stark, and you want me to go back and give it to him now? I'm like, yes, you're going to risk the fate of the world on your blood feud with Tony's dad, because you're a jackass who doesn't look up what Tony actually does for a living. You know, save the world, stop people from crashing meteorite cities inside of it. Which they do have a very cheeky remark about that also. But I'll leave that one for you guys to experience in the movie because that one was kind of funny. And even when they had to go get the tech from... they actually have to go to the Avenger headquarters to get tech. And you get Scott Lang versus the Falcon. And Falcon gets his ass handed to him by a guy who just barely got the suit and has barely any control of these ants, by the way. And just... There is... being part of the same universe and forcing that onto us. The end credit scene, one of them in fact, is just basically Falcon investigating, trying to find out who Scott Lang is, even though he told him his name. Pretty hilariously, actually. So they have to like drop down onto the base, thinking it's an empty warehouse, but it turns out it's the new headquarters for Avengers, and I guess you technically could say S.H.I.E.L.D. But he lands on the roof, and then Falcon comes in and is like, I got a sensor drop here, but I'm not seeing anything. And, wait, what's that? And he's got these like super goggles that are like zooming in on Scott, and he's like, everyone's like telling Scott, get out of there, just leave. And he's like, no, it's fine. He can't see me. I can see you. Damn it. It gets big again. Control, I've got a contact. He's got some kind of shrinking technology. I'll deal with it. And Scott undoes his mask and everything's like, hi, I'm Scott. He just, hi, I'm Scott. And they actually get in a little bit of they get in a fight, and again, it's just as creative. Falcon's goggles can apparently see him when he's shrunk down, even though they shouldn't be able to. They get in a fight, and Scott's like ripping apart all of the machinery inside of his Falcon wing stuff, and like ejecting one of the wings and setting him on a little spew thing. And it basically ends with Falcon getting up, seeing that he's gone, and he's like, okay, nobody is to tell Captain America about this, ever. He was like, yeah, that his partner in crime is, got beat by an ant. Yep. It's just, this movie was creative and fun, but the cheeky remarks to the cinematic universe kind of ruin parts of it. Don't get me wrong, this movie is not bad. It was very enjoyable. The actual heist segment of it is one of the most enjoyable segments I've seen inside of a Marvel movie in a while. And yes, that is including stuff that happened inside of Age of Ultron. And you guys know how much I loved Age of Ultron. So, yeah, my final verdict is go see it immediately and go see it in 3D. Don't take your entire family. You know, there's nothing really horrible that you're not going to approve of or anything like that. It's just a fun action ride from start to end. So, yeah, that's it for me. Did you enjoy the video? Have you seen Ant-Man? Tell me what you thought about it in the comments below, and we'll hopefully get some healthy discussion going. And if you like what you see, you can subscribe to my channel, as well as check out my playlist of midnight showings up in these corners right here. And if you want to see my more recent videos, and maybe the Avengers video, I will have the recent ones right here, and the Avengers posted right here in this middle. And if you'd like to, I have a new Facebook page. I will have a link to that in the description below. And yeah, I will see you all next time.